Welcome to the Well Prepared Life podcast, where we dive into the fundamentals of readiness for life's challenges, covering topics from personal responsibility to mental and physical preparedness and beyond. Let's forge resilience, nurture growth, and embrace responsibility on the journey to the well-prepared life. Welcome to episode 11 of the Well Prepared Life podcast, where we forge resilience, nurture growth, and embrace responsibility on this journey to the well prepared life. My name is Nathan.
And I'm Kyle. And I was thinking a lot about how we've had a couple of discussions on community. And I was thinking about how, we have different people in a community that have different skill sets, and they can kind of combine and achieve a common goal of surviving and building good community in good or bad situations. And then I was thinking about risk assessments and how we have certain ways that you can lower risk of certain bad things from happening.
Yeah. We talked about that in a more practical sense, day to day, as far as planning a trip, right? And planning traveling stuff.
Yeah.
But then also in the more extreme scenarios.
Right, like a hurricane.
Yeah, like Hurricane Helene and Milton that have happened recently.
Right, exactly. So then I got to think, what skills, if something happens, what are some good skill sets to have so that I can, I was actually kind of asking for myself, what kind of skill sets should I start trying to gain to be able to help my community and lower that risk of something bad happening? Should I learn how to change a car tire? Okay, that'd be a good skill to have. But what are some other skills, Nathan, that you think I should shoot for?
I was thinking about this question more, and definitely thought about it from more the emergency side of things. And there are some stuff that are not emergency; they're just helpful skills to have. I even put this on as a more intermediate skill, but it'd be helpful in an everyday thing as far as general carpentry and handyman stuff.
Okay.
As far as that would be a good skill to have in general. As far as for everyday stuff.
Yeah, makes sense.
But from the more emergency side of things, the first thing I actually went to the more hard skills first, and I was wait, those aren't necessarily the most important skills. Our mental skills. Hard skills would be physical things that you do, tasks that you complete.
Gotcha.
But then I'm the mental skills, soft skills are, I think, the first and better place to start.
I gotcha.
And we will probably at some point do a whole podcast on some of these things. But the two that came to mind first, as far as everybody should at least work on developing these as skills. And sometimes it's hard, sometimes it's not easy.
Yeah.
But are being able to stop and assess a situation. So sometimes you can be overwhelmed, but do you have the ability when things are overwhelming to take a step back, breathe, and figure out what is actually happening around me,
and not just escalate in panic and anxiety.
And then from that, another skill that you need to have this skill right after that. These kind of go together. Is quick decision making.
Okay.
Can you stop, assess the situation, and that needs to be relatively quick. As far as can you look at what's happening around you, and be okay, this is happening, that's happening. These are the immediate consequences I need to be aware of. Okay, here's the next thing we need to do right now.
It sounds like something I've heard of in the past, of OODA loop, where you observe before you decide and act.
I've heard that. I don't have it memorized, but that's this idea of situational awareness.
Yeah,
is where the
OODA loop
model comes in.
Yeah,
which yes, that's good. And situational awareness, I think, is part of the whole process of assessing a situation. If you're not situationally aware, then you're going to struggle with that.
Yeah.
But I think this is even more there's a book, Extreme Ownership, that Jocko wrote.
Come on.
Have you read that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So Jocko wrote this, and he talks about, I forget which chapter, it's been a while since I've read it, but he talked about how he's able to, in some situations, observe the battlefield. He's a Navy SEAL. The whole book is based on stories that he had through different battles that he went through and the leadership principles that he learned from them. Good book, solid. I would say if you want a quick read, just read the last applicable portion of each one. If you like the military stories, read the whole chapter.
Background there.
But in that, one of his applications was to take a step back, breathe, and figure out what is actually happening.
Yeah.
And that's the paraphrase. I don't know exactly the language he used, but it's literally take 3 breaths, breathe. And his kind of verbiage a little bit was separate yourself from the situation.
You call it decentralized command. That's the same thing I'm thinking of, because it's you can't be in the thick of it. You kind of got to step back.
Yeah, it might be
decentralized kind of. Yeah.
And it's that idea of, can you emotionally not check out, but kind of put a pause button
Right.
on the overwhelming feelings that you're having, so you can actually understand what's actually happening.
Yeah.
And that's easier for some people than it is for others. I found that it's easy for myself, and some people, I'd say most people actually won't know if they can do that until they actually experience a situation that puts them in that place where it's like, can I, like, I need to make a decision right now.
Mhm.
Am I going to freeze, or am I actually going to take action?
Yeah.
And it's like, so I think that the way you train for that is putting your, like, choosing to be in stressful situations where you have to make decisions.
Yeah. Seek out the challenge.
So, like,
Yeah.
I think one of the easiest opportunities for this are like team sports.
Yeah.
Especially like high competitive team sports.
Like basketball, soccer.
Yeah. Like
football, frisbee.
Football is the one that comes to mind the most.
Mm-hmm.
But even like, I would say like, and not even necessarily team sports, like martial arts, especially the more physical, like not form based, but actual like fighting based ones, like Krav Maga, jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai, things where it's like I have to react and respond immediately, like,
or get hurt.
Yeah.
Or pinned, or
like I did jiu-jitsu for a few months. Something I'd love to pick up. It's just gym time is very expensive with those. Classes are very expensive.
And very committed. You have to be all in.
Yeah, which I loved it. I was doing it 3 or 4 times a week.
Yeah.
And it was great. And I would do that. Like, it was a workout.
Yeah.
But when in there, like the instructor that was there, he's like, jiu-jitsu is physical chess.
Yeah. That
he's like, the people who are really good at it are thinking like 10 moves ahead, in the sense of like, if you do this, I'm going to do that, which then causes you to do that, which then causes me, and then I'm going to pin you in 10 moves.
Yeah.
As far as like,
that's crazy.
After these few actions, like, I will get like,
it's just so automatic.
And they've done it so much that they know what to do without having to think about it, and that's like kind of the goal. And it's really interesting. When I started as like a white belt, as everybody does, it was like I was easily the worst person in the class. And it's like, didn't matter. The only people that I came close to were people that I was like, had a massive size advantage on, like 12-year-olds, as I'm a 25-year-old at the time.
Right.
And like, there was a 16-year-old who I probably had 50 pounds on, who I pinned once.
Wow.
And like the whole time that I like was there, because he'd been doing it for a few years at least, and I was in there for like 3 months. And it's like, the fact that I pinned him once was like, size still makes a difference, but like his knowledge and skill and background and experience in most situations trumped my size.
Yeah. So would you say that's a good skill to have? Is like some level of like awareness and self-defense, like doing some self-defense?
I do think so.
Something like that would be good.
Yeah, self-defense is definitely something I have on the list of things that people should work towards. And for 2 reasons. One is the physical, actual act of self-defense. Like, do you have the ability to protect yourself and to keep yourself safe in a fight? For if firearms are involved, like, do you know when to use them, how to use them? Because the when is just as important as the how.
All police officers, they have to know when. That's their biggest thing.
And it's like, as a citizen and like somebody who's like an armed citizen and wanting to do that well, do you actually take the time to like train to the level like past where police officers, because police officers have like some requirements, but if you actually look at them, it's like surprisingly minimal in some situations.
Like once a year, I think you have to shoot.
Yeah, like from a shooting qualification, it's once a year, and they might have more training like in the police academy, but once they're out of the academy, it's like qualification once a year, and then maybe a couple like re-up trainings a couple times a year.
Yeah.
Just to be like, hey,
just make sure you can.
Yeah, just know what to expect.
Right.
But everything I see from people that like are like wanting to be like prepared citizens and civilians that like actually like carry firearms and do it for self-defense, they're actually putting like time in every week, time in like at least monthly, and then also taking courses, learning from professionals and learning from people. It's like, okay, what does it look like to like, when is appropriate to respond with potentially deadly force, honestly, to respond with deadly force if you're using a firearm. Like, that's what it is. There's the reality of like, it is deadly force, and if you're doing it, you better like have a good reason for it.
Right.
So understanding the when, and also putting like practicing that, which is like, in courses are probably the best situations, but like if you have friends that you shoot with, like shooting under stress is a great way, and having like no shoot targets, as far as like the classic example are like targets that have like a bad guy with like a small target in front of it. And so you have like, you're like, you need to shoot that one, but not the other one. Or you have multiple targets. Some are white, some are brown. And that sounded bad. That was just literally cardboard and like painted white. Some are cardboard straight. Like, but in that sense where it's like, if the brown is the good guy or the white is the good guy in that situation or the innocent person in the room,
Right.
do you know which one you're shooting? Like you're just labeling them A, B, C, D, with 4 targets across and be like A and B are trying to kill you, C and D are not.
Yeah.
And it's like, and you need to come in and then you could have somebody as part of the training actually shift where they are in its place. So it's like, it could be A, C, D, B.
Yeah.
And it's like A and B are the ones trying to kill you.
Right.
And it's like, can you actually process and be aware in a situation like that to respond in a reasonable amount of time and do that? So that's like,
right.
And then it's like, that's also the actual like training how to use the gun too. Like, can you not like flag the innocent people in the room with your gun? Like, can you move in a way that protects people that are innocent and takes out people that are trying to hurt others? Like, and can you like be aware of what you're shooting and what's behind it, and like the basic gun rules. And like, that's hard. And so like the best way that I've heard is like to simulate that stress is like exercise and then do that activity.
I've heard that live ammo training is one of the best ways to actually get it, because it's like live ammo.
And then with live ammo, like the thing that I've heard is like you do 20 push-ups and then do that right after.
Oh yeah.
So you get your heart rate up. Yeah. You get like you're breathing heavy. Yeah. And then it's like, now do that exercise.
You're physically like strained and weak a little bit.
Yeah. Like there was a time when I lived in Alaska, I'd go shooting with my best friend, and we would there's a spot that we went that like had like it was like in the mountains and like gravel, like basically like just huge gravel hills, like as part of the like bottom part of the mountain. And we'd grab a big like 40-pound boulder and we'd run up it for like probably like 50 yards and then run back down and then shoot the targets at the bottom. And like that's trying to work on like, okay, how can we like make sure that we are on target, shooting where we want to shoot, and then like doing it under like stress.
Yeah.
So self-defense is a big topic, and I think it's oftentimes approached in I have a gun, so I'm good. Yeah. Like it's lackadaisical.
No training at all. It's very dangerous.
And so that's where it's like, if I start carrying, I'm not going to do that unless I like am putting myself in a position to be consistent with my training and be able to like keep myself in a spot where I'm like, I know I am being responsible in how I carry a firearm.
Because there's like, to that point, it's not just how you use it, but when you use it.
Yeah.
Because just a random guy holding up a gas station, getting out of the gun, do you pull the gun then? Do you try to defend the townspeople then, or do you just let the guy get the cash and roll out? Let the cops.
Yeah. Well, and something I just thought of as far as like in realm with self-defense, and I think it could be included in the exact same category, but at the very least it's closely adjacent to it. Is the idea of like verbal de-escalation.
Right.
And are you able to like, and like, because here's the big thing that gets a lot of people into fights, especially like when you think of like the typical like street fight, bar fight kind of thing, is do you know when to just like take it?
Right, and just walk away.
Yeah, it's like you don't have to win the argument.
Right. Like you're probably going to get damaged a little bit, but
and like,
are you fight,
going back to the episode we talked about confidence?
Yeah.
Are you confident enough in yourself and the identity that you have in who you are that you don't have to prove that you're right?
I was just reading Proverbs and that came up. It's like the wise man can ignore an insult, but the foolish man just takes it to his heart, and then just lets it eat at him.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And so like, do you know how to de-escalate? Part of that is like knowing when to walk away.
Yeah.
Part of that is also knowing like, how do you interact with somebody? Be like, hey man, what's going on in your life? Yeah. Like what is actually happening here? Like there's some energy here, and I want to like my goal is to like help you, because it's like as we with the identity podcast and that idea, as we think about people and we care for people as people, our goal should be to like, we don't want somebody to put themselves in a situation, whether it's like, think about the good police officer stories you hear of like where an officer like is interacting with somebody that's like has a gun, is wanting like maybe has hostages or is trying to harm other people, and they're able to be like, hey, we want to like help you.
Right.
Like,
we don't want to have anybody lose a life.
Yeah, we don't want anybody to lose life here, including you.
Yeah. Even someone acting really foolish.
Yeah. And so it's like, do you know how to interact in those situations? And you got to be wise, like as far as like if you're in that situation and like you can't, like, because there are some people that would take it to the extreme of basically allowing themselves to get in a spot where they would get shot before they'd actually like respond in any type of physical force. And it's like, so you got to like know the line as far as like, I either need to be gone or I need to actually take action.
Right.
But also it's like, do you know how to interact with people in a way that will more often than not calm situations versus escalate them?
And that might be one of those good survival skills.
Yeah,
of like good
absolutely.
basic skills to have. Is just being able to know how to calm people,
Well,
how to be a soothing presence.
Because you think of emergency situations, everybody's high stress.
Right.
Most times, everybody's short on sleep. They're tired.
Right.
So it's like thinking about Hurricane Helene.
Mm-hmm.
Like their house possibly just got swept. Like there are people whose houses, like we talked about this before we started the podcast, but it's like there are people whose houses literally got swept away.
Yeah.
Everything they own is just gone. And then the crazier part that adds more stress that some of them may or may not be thinking about yet is a lot of those areas didn't have mudslide and flood insurance. So it's not only is their house gone, they also don't have any means of like getting it back and like rebuilding.
Yeah.
And it's like sad and terrible that they're in that situation, but it's like, so now you got somebody that's stressed, somebody that's tired, somebody that doesn't have, like, is likely hungry, doesn't have access to like food and water and like it's clean and trustworthy. And they're coming at you trying to feed their kid.
Right.
It's like, how are you interacting with that person?
Yeah. You're not going to do it by, ignoring them and just kind of being aggressive. You got to be soothing and caring. And
And so it's like
you're emotionally intelligent.
Yeah.
Is that an EQ, something like that?
EQ is emotional quotient. With
something like that. Yeah. That's what it means.
But it's like, do you have the soft skills to de-escalate a situation? So it's like assessing situations, and that all kind of comes together. Assessing situations, making quick decisions in order to de-escalate and like move forward in the best way possible.
Yeah, that's good. So then you got some basic skills of knowing, assessing the situation, making decisions really, really quickly, and being somewhat physically self-defense type of capable in case something happens. You can at least handle your own, I guess, self. Is that like a better physically fit? What did you say?
Yeah, physically fit. Like, that's honestly, it's the best thing that you can do for yourself for any emergency is get fit. And I say this as somebody that's not as fit as I want to be.
Yeah.
And honestly, I would say somebody that's like really not that fit in general. I would say I'm not fat, and I would say I am like not weak.
Same.
In the sense of like I'm decently strong.
Right.
And I'm not like, I might be, if I'm overweight, I'm like in the first step of being overweight, that kind of thing.
Well, slightly. Yeah. But nothing.
But like, so it's like, okay, I know that, but I'm not fit.
Right.
Still like if I run a mile, I'm struggling by the end of it. If I like try to lift super heavy, I'm struggling.
Yeah.
And so that's where it's like knowing that I'm not in that space, like, and that's something I want to work on. Like I think about that regularly as far as how I'm like, honestly, it's like I think about regularly how much I'm not living into that the way that I want to be.
Yeah.
But the best thing you can do across the board is be physically fit. As a goal that I have for myself, because if you're physically fit, there's like lots of studies that show you think more clearly. You can like have the endurance to like travel and like walk and hike and move more, like just the practical stuff.
Yeah.
You can help others more easily. You can like, there's so many benefits like to being physically fit that if you're in an emergency situation, like we talked about, I think I mentioned this on a podcast early on where there's a YouTuber I watched. It's like, if you're not fit, you're going to die.
Yeah. First episodes. Yeah.
And so it's like in an emergency situation, it's like, if you're not fit, the odds that things are going to be worse are higher than if you are fit.
Yeah. That's good.
So those are like soft, like that's getting into some of the hard skills as far as things you can do. But yeah, so you have all those soft skills as far as like assessment, decision-making, de-escalation, getting into some of the hard skills of being fit, knowing how to handle yourself physically, like with self-defense, both through like potential like martial arts and then also like firearms, and knowing when and how to use those tools.
Yeah.
But then there's some basic like physical skills that I think everybody should have.
Okay. A couple of those.
And some of these you hear, you're like, oh, of course.
Yeah.
Everybody had, like most people do this. CPR and basic first aid.
Yeah.
As far as like the classic, like if you babysit, you should have that kind of
lifeguard.
So you have that. That's the first thing of like, get a Red Cross CPR and basic first aid class. As far as like, because in your typical day-to-day emergencies, 911 is the best option.
Yeah.
And that's what they'll teach you is they say, how do you figure out what to do in the moment? Call 911 and then call 911. Like as far as like do CPR, call 911 and do those things.
Delegate, like you call 911. I remember that from CPR training. You have to have someone designated to call 911 or else somebody might not do it. So.
Yeah. So do the CPR and the basic first aid, get that. And then take it a step further. There's an organization called Stop the Bleed.
Right. Yeah.
And basically that's trauma first aid. It's geared towards like I think it's primarily geared towards like, as we see, and it's talked about at least a lot more in culture, is like shootings, like mass shootings in public, where it's like, what do you do if that happens, and how can you help the people around you in that situation?
I'm sure it helps with like natural disasters, like a hurricane coming through,
like any major injury. So you're going beyond the basic stuff into this person just like had something sliced, like as far as like you're cutting firewood and the axe slips and you cut into your leg pretty severely.
That's pretty good. Yeah.
It's bleeding a lot. Do you know what to do in that situation? And so stop the bleed courses range from free to pretty cheap. Like the most expensive one I've seen is like $50 to $100.
Not terrible.
And I've seen some free ones that are like provided by certain locations. It's based on like where the class is held.
Okay.
But yeah, look up Stop the Bleed, find one in your area, sign up with a couple friends and take it together. It's something I actually haven't done yet. I've done a lot of research in. I've done similar courses with friends that are in the military and have had some of the more like military style, but it's something I'd like to do.
Yeah.
But it's like, that's going to be the next step as far as, can you help people in a more traumatic situation? Because those happen in daily life. Car accidents, like accidents at home, accidents at work, like all kinds of things that do happen around us. And it's like, are you equipped to help people and help yourself in those situations?
So it sounds like we're kind of ramping up into more advanced skill sets. Are there any others that are
I would say
basic?
We're still like, that's still basic.
That's just the basic.
That's still basic, because that's like, this is anybody and everybody could run into this situation easily.
Gotcha.
And I do think that like everybody should have basic CPR and first aid and Stop the Bleed course as like a physical thing.
That's good. Okay.
We get into now more of the emergency side of things. Like those are emergency things, but those are like everyday emergency things.
Yeah.
But now it's like you look at like Hurricane Helene emergency type things.
Okay.
Where it's like, do you know how to filter and purify water? Like these people, a lot of the people in that situation, like possibly like if they had a couple bottles of water in the car, that might be all that they have.
Yeah.
And so
like
do they have
water coming through? Like how do you purify that?
Like what tools do you have to do that? What if you don't have anything on hand? The natural stuff you can do, because there are things you can do with like taking a scarf and pre-filtering water into something and then using rocks and sand and charcoal from your fire to like actually filter water without actually needing to like have a official like filter that you purchased.
Right. Yeah.
But if you also have the purchased option, using that too, and then purifying as far as like iodine tablets, and there are different like infrared, like light-based like type purification devices
that have that. You put a light on and it'll purify the water inside of it extra.
Yeah, and like
extra good.
Yeah, actually like the end to those, and then actual like water filtration devices. Like there are water bottles. Like there's one, it's called like Gray something. But it's like basically a water bottle. It's the bottom of it is just a case, so you scoop up water from your source, and then you just push, and it has like a big filter, and you just kind of push it through, and it just filters into it, and you just drink out of it like with a straw.
That's pretty good.
And it's like a quick, easy way to have like a water filter.
Nice. Okay.
So filtering and purifying water, because like the rule of threes is like you can go like 3 minutes without air, 3 days without water, and 3 weeks without food. And from some of the research and videos that I've seen talking about that, really it's like you're pretty much useless after 2 days without water. Like sure, you can be alive for 3 days, but it's like your arms start cramping up. You don't have the ability to move the way that you need to. And so after 3 days, like by 2 days, you're basically useless, and day 3 is like, I'm dying.
I got you. Okay.
And then after that is like, do you know how to start a fire?
Yeah.
Like if you don't have a stove, if you don't have something else, like, and that could be just with a lighter.
And that could purify water too, right?
Yeah, you can boil water. So it's like you pre-filter it, do your initial stuff with like a shirt, like make it so it's as clean as it possibly can physically. That's what it looks like.
Dirt, whatever.
And then boil it.
Okay. So you need to learn how to start a fire to boil.
Yep. So you start a fire, you need to have something to boil it in.
Yeah.
But like, so starting a fire that doesn't go out. Because like that's the classic thing that I've run in a lot. I finally figured out a way. There's a guy resource. It's like his channel is called the Gray Bearded Green Beret, and it's the elevator fire lay. Okay. It's my favorite one. It's the one I've had the most success with consistently.
Better than the TP, better than the chimney.
So like
stacks.
Those are both. I start with the elevator, and then I'll move into typically the log cabin like chimney type from there. Okay. But the elevator fire lay like is what he talks about. But learn how to start a fire that will keep going, because I know like the TP, the classic thing is burns hot and fast. Yeah. Like and it falls over, and then it's like just embers and it may or may not keep going.
Yeah.
And it's not something that you can cook over, because like a fire that you need to cook over needs to be something that's like slow and steady.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's good. So yeah. So can you start a fire, but then also learning how to cook over a fire. I'd say we all know the basic, like throw a hot dog on a stick and cook a hot dog over a fire.
Yeah.
But you know how to like boil water on a fire, like, because that's not as easy as it sounds.
Just hold a pan over top of a pot.
What are you holding it with? Your hand?
Yeah.
As far as right with the fire. But as far as like,
close.
yeah, in the sense of like, how do you boil water over it? Do you set up something to hold a pot? Do you like have a stick that you put it on? Do you put it on a rock right next to / in the fire?
Yeah. Okay.
Do you like, if you need to like cook other types of meat, like do you know how to make like a spit that you can like turn it and roast it over if you like shot a squirrel, like for instance, in that situation where it's like you don't have any food and you're hunting for whatever you can find. So it's like, do you know how to cook over a fire, and use that? And like even the more advanced, like the more like fun camping stuff, as far as like using a Dutch oven in a fire. And like we tried to cook this like baked French toast kind of thing while we were camping a year or so ago, and we like got it in the fire and we thought we had it good, but it was just like in a too hot portion, too hot and smoky portion of the fire.
Yeah.
And so it was like super burnt on the outside, and then it just tasted like smoke.
Gooey.
So it was like gooey in the middle, burnt on the outside, and tasted like straight smoke.
Yeah.
And so it's like that was not a well prepared meal in that regard.
Yeah. That's good.
And so, do you know how to cook over fire? Because those are things. It's like if you're in an emergency situation, even if it's just for a couple days, and you're like, the power is out, you have an electric stove, you have meat in the freezer that's going to go bad,
right?
And it's like, and you know it's going to go bad, so you need to cook it before it goes bad, but you can't use your stove because it's electric,
right? Can
you cook it even if it's just your campfire in your backyard?
Yeah,
like kind of thing, like just to use it and make sure that it doesn't go bad.
Yeah. That's interesting.
And so just like basic skills for that.
I picture like stranded out in the middle of nowhere, like I gotta survive, in a random one-off situation, but losing power for a couple days. Yeah.
Like if you have a power outage for a week.
Yeah. Like it's very possible.
Your food in the freezer will go bad.
Yeah.
And it's like, and sure, if you have a grill or propane grill, use that until the propane goes out. Great. Charcoal grill, if you have some charcoal, awesome. Use that.
Yeah.
Use the tools that you have. But it's like, if you don't have those things, what do you do?
Yeah.
So like, can you cook over fire?
That's good.
Which, pro tip in that regard, if you have a grill but don't have fuel for it, but you can make a fire, set up some type of contraption and take the grates off of your grill and use that over top of the fire. And it's like, you can basically use the fire like a grill. Yeah. Like as far as if you have the grill but no fuel, like just use the fire as its own source of fuel and use the grates to make it easier to cook.
Yeah, that's clever.
Just be careful, set up the way it's not going to fall on you. But, but yeah, so another area is like basic shelter building. So for these people whose houses got wiped away, I'm guessing that some of them weren't able to like easily get out of their area. Like there was like, they don't have a home.
Roadways.
The roads are washed out.
Right. Yeah.
They don't have a way to get to a hotel or get to some place. So do you know how to make something that can keep you dry? And that can range from, do you have a tent? Setting up a tent, using like tarp shelters. So that like, basically just having the ability of, if you have a poncho or a tarp, setting it up just to like have a place where you can get dry. Lean-to. There's a whole bunch of different options with that. Again, another like kind of like just plug for this guy, Gray Bearded Green Beret.
Okay.
He has one he calls it the Rapid Ridgeline system of like how he uses poncho shelters, and it's like something I've used a lot when I've gone camping, because I tend to do more rustic style camping. I don't have a tent yet. I need to buy a tent because we have a kid now, and it just doesn't work the same.
The hammock is not good for the kid.
Yeah, not easy. We haven't tried it yet.
A little bit.
But yeah, so tent shelters, tarp shelters, all the way up to like full bushcraft type shelter making. And that's not necessarily that you need to know all of them, but it's like have options. Like as far as like, if you have a tent, know how to set it up easily. Yeah. Like some people have bought a tent, said we're gonna go camping, and then never use it. Set it up in your backyard. Just test it out.
Right. Just make sure you can at least set it up.
And then same thing with the tarp as far as like using it. And then bushcraft is like, that's kind of the more fun and long-term kind of thing. If you know it's going to be a while, can you create a shelter, or it's like in more intense inclement weather, cold weather especially, can you set something up that's going to keep you warm.
Is it like that show Alone?
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah.
Mhm.
Where they like set up a home base kind of thing, like a
Yeah.
little house.
Exactly. Like that would be
Yeah.
like bushcraft shelter making.
Gotcha. Okay.
And that sometimes can involve tarps and stuff like
Mhm.
that.
But it's long term.
Yeah, that's
Gotcha.
that's like
That's
You're-
more extreme, more advanced, I guess.
Yeah.
skills to have. Yeah.
that'd be more advanced. But
Yeah.
the idea is like, can you keep yourself dry
Yeah.
and warm? Dry and warm are the two goals that you want.
Yeah.
And then you get into like basic navigation type stuff.
Mm.
And I say that like normal maps, like city maps, not talking about like military maps and like using a protractor and a compass to like figure out your way. Maybe you have a compass,
Yeah.
but the thought and question behind this is, can you get home without your phone?
That's good. Okay.
Or can you get to like your friend's house without your phone if your home is not
if internet's
safe?
down and
Yeah.
you
Um,
need to get somewhere safe.
or it's just your phone is dead.
Yeah.
Like you don't have
Yeah.
power for a couple days,
Can't charge it.
don't have any way to charge it, your phone dies. Can
Yeah.
you get to where you need to go
That's true.
without a phone?
That's interesting. So you have to have a paper map already kind of printed out or
Yes
purchased or
and
something.
no. It depends on where you're going, what you're trying to do. I would say it's a good practice to have
Okay.
it. But it's like, but if you're like for me, if I'm in a situation where, like this is the more extreme situation, but it just makes the point in this situation. For some reason, cars aren't working well. My car breaks down. I can't trust people to like help get me home. I don't know people that can drive.
Mhm.
Whatever reason, I have to get from work to my house without that.
Okay.
I know how to get home. Like I know the route to get home without having to have my phone. Like it's
Yeah.
going to be harder and longer and it's going to take time,
Yeah.
but I know what like where to go, what needs to happen to do that.
Okay.
And like, but I don't know that from every place that I go.
That's fair.
Um,
Yeah.
So physical maps are good, and I recommend them.
Yeah.
But just like, do you have the ability to even just read a physical map and be like, I need to find this place on a map, and then figure out where I am, and then what roads do I follow to get there?
So how would you do that with like you looking at geographical features, looking at landmarks, road signs,
Road
that
signs,
kind of thing?
like that's the like as far as if you just have a regular city map
Yeah.
of your area, or an almanac that has a lot of like major cities and roads.
Mhm.
As far as can you just navigate without a phone? And like, there's something to be said even for like if you're doing a road trip.
Mhm.
Having like a goal of saying like from this gas station to that gas station, like they were along our trip, we're gonna do it just with regular maps.
I've always wanted to do that. Like take a big old road trip somewhere new and no phone.
Yeah.
Just paper maps. Back in the old day.
Yeah, and like and even if you use MapQuest
Yeah.
to like get your initial
Yeah.
route, but you have to actually figure out the road signs. You're not watching a line,
Right.
which I'm terrible at.
Yeah.
Like Tara's, my wife is always just like frustrated because she's like, you're supposed to turn there. It's like, well, the line looked like it was later. She's like, doesn't matter what the line said. The street
The
sign
road-
said this.
Like the road signs. Yeah. I
um,
can see that. Yeah.
but yeah, so basic navigation.
Okay.
You can take that to a bunch of extremes and like go into like actual like land nav and stuff. But
Mhm.
can you read a regular map?
What about things like food and water procurement? Well, I guess you already talked about water procurement.
Yeah.
What about like food? Like
So that's the
gardening?
hard thing.
Is that beginner? Or is that more like
So the
Thanks.
beginner option for food is store some food.
yeah?
Like have
a couple
food.
days worth. Yeah.
That's the beginner option
Mhm.
because like the reality is getting food is typically a long and hard process.
Yeah.
Like if you
Yeah.
don't have any to fully getting it, it's like the easy way is going to the store. But if the store is bought like empty
Mhm.
or you don't know somebody else that has food, the easy thing is have food.
Yeah.
And so that's why it's like looking at like former FEMA recommendations, but like current, it's like have 2 weeks of food
Mhm.
that you don't like. Ideally, you don't even need to cook to eat. Like as
Like,
far
just
as like
open up the bag and
mhm.
kind of thing.
Like
MREs.
MREs,
ready.
emergency rations.
Yeah.
Like even if it's like you have to cook it, but it's like a mountain house meal where you have water, add water.
I like that.
Like boiled water.
Yeah.
Like those taste better.
I like those ones. Yeah. Yeah.
But even like energy bars, like protein bars,
Okay.
protein shake, like protein shakes, but like even protein shakes, honestly, like if you have water and
Yeah.
that, like something that can get you calories and food.
We just got a couple canned goods, canned foods, roughly a week's worth. I'd say after the hurricane.
Yeah.
Main things like man, you just never know.
Well, and canned goods in general actually are pretty good. The hard thing with canned goods is they don't travel well.
Oh yeah. That makes sense.
They're heavy.
Yeah.
But
Heavy.
if you don't need to go anywhere, canned goods are a great option because you actually don't need to cook them to eat them.
Right.
Like
Right.
they're fully cooked, they're fully healthy. Now they're going to taste better warm most of
Right.
the time, but
Yeah.
you don't need to cook them.
They got a long shelf life, right?
Oh yeah, most of them it's like
Couple years.
well, most of them it's like unless it's like meat is the questionable stuff if it has more meat products in it, but like if it doesn't have meat products in it, it's probably good past its expiration date
Yeah.
by like quite a bit.
Okay.
And you can tell if like, is it rancid? Like smell it before you eat
Yeah.
it. And like,
Yeah.
if it's not like if the seal isn't broken and it doesn't smell bad, it's probably safe to eat.
Okay. It's good to know.
With that. So yeah, so those are the basic skills. And I think let's wrap it up there.
Okay.
And next week, let's talk more about the more intermediate skills. So going from what do you need in general emergencies and stuff into like, okay, what does it look like for, okay, we need to work with other people to thrive in a hard situation.
Yeah.
Because like there are bigger things and like other parts, like kind of give like a little bit of a sneak peek into that as far as like how do you like good like soft skills or like teamwork and keeping up morale as far as like if you're in an extended situation as some of these people in North Carolina and Tennessee are, it's like how do you keep us in a spot where you're not just like completely discouraged.
Yeah.
Because of morale, like there's a phrase that you used, a statement that you used a couple weeks ago where it's like if you believe you can't do something, you can't. Like it's basically, I don't remember how.
Whether you believe you can or can't do something, you're right. Something like that.
If you believe you can or can't do something, you're right.
You're right.
That's like what you said. And that applies, like morale is a huge thing in any type of emergency situation as far as like, are you ready to face the harder things? And as people that want to live that well-prepared life, like that's our goal. Is to be resilient and ready to face those hard things.
Right.
And here's what I will say, like kind of the reason for this, and this is kind of a main point and takeaway that hopefully you picked up through, but I'm going to say it explicitly here, is while you can't necessarily change whether a situation is good or bad, you can have an impact on how bad it is based on the skills that you have and your level of like personal preparedness.
It's still going to be bad.
It could
still make it less bad with
and it ranges
skills
based on the situation.
Yeah. Flat tire is never fun.
Yeah.
But if you know how to change it and you have a flat, you're spare. If you have a spare.
Yeah. So it's like it based on the situation as far as like if it's the more extreme it is, the worse it's going to be in general. But it's going to be even worse if you're not ready for it.
That's good.
Like as far as like thinking about these people with her in Hurricane Helene, the people that know how to purify water and have the tools to do that are faring better than the people who don't.
Yeah.
Like it's still a terrible situation for both groups of people, but it is even harder for the people who don't know and don't have the like tools and resources to purify water.
And not just for yourself, but to help other people, help the community around you.
Yeah.
Like we talked about.
And so that's where it's like the goal of this is to set yourself up so that when bad things happen, because they happen to people all the time. And that's the thing that I think is, it's easy to go through life and have this perspective of like, it never happened. It won't happen to me.
Right.
And there's a chance that could be true.
Hopefully.
But it's people that want to live the well-prepared life, we need to, for ourselves, for our families, for the people around us, live in the spot of, it could happen to me and I want to be ready.
Yeah.
But yeah, because that's what it means to be well-prepared. And that's what it means to be like resilient and to embrace the responsibility of caring for yourself and those around you. Yeah, so we'll talk more about this in our next episode. But yeah, thank you for joining us on this journey to the well-prepared life as we look into what it takes to do better than it could otherwise be and hopefully thrive in even some of the like harder and worse situations.